This is absolutely insane. Not only is Bryce Harper absolutely tearing it up on the field, but is also getting into it with MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. We have a massive new report breaking down an interesting verbal altercation that went down in the Phillies locker room with Bryce Harper right at the heart of everything. I do want to dive into exactly what we know in the situation. This is like something I can't ever remember surfacing before, and there is a pretty real deal story that we do have to pay attention to about the future of Major League Baseball. So let's dive right into the topic today. I do want to start off with the report that started this. This is coming from ESPN's Jeff Passan here saying Philadelphia Phillies star Bryce Harper stood nose to nose with MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred during a meeting last week and told him to, quote, get the F out of our clubhouse if he wanted to talk about a salary cap, sources told ESPN. News free and unlocked. So obviously a strong start to the report with that basic news there. Now, we sort of heard some whispers. A couple of the local reporters were on the scene and sort of acknowledging that there was some sort of heated altercation, heated meeting between the commissioner and the Phillies overall here. And for the record on this meeting, what it was is Rob Manfred is making his rounds, meeting with every team individually to what he views is to build better relationships. I don't think that quite went well here in Philadelphia, and there are some just absolutely stellar quotes from Nick Castellanos in this article. So I do want to highlight this and talk a little bit about the overarching theme, and let's get into the full details here. So obviously, we do know the headline there, and the meat and potatoes of this story here is right at the top saying, quiet for the majority of the meeting, Harper, sitting in a chair and holding a bat, eventually grew frustrated and said if the MLB were to propose a cap and hold firm to it, players, quote, are not scared to lose 162 games, sources from the meeting told ESPN. Harper stood up, walked toward the middle of the room, faced Manfred, and said, quote, if you want to speak about that, you can get the F out of our clubhouse. Manfred, sources said, responded that he was, quote, not going to get the F out of here, and saying that it was important to talk about the threats to MLB's business and ways to grow the game. Before the situation further intensified, veteran outfielder Nick Castellanos tried to defuse the tension, saying, quote, I have a few more questions. The meeting continued, and Harper and Manfred eventually shook hands, sources said, though Harper declined to answer phone calls from Manfred the next day. Quote, it was pretty intense, definitely passionate, Castellanos told ESPN. Both of them, the commissioner giving it back to Bryce and Bryce giving it back to the commissioner. That's Harp. He's been doing this since he was 15 years old. It's just another day. I wasn't surprised. When reached by ESPN, Harper declined to comment. Manfred declined to comment through a league spokesperson. So obviously something pretty significant happened here with both of them declining to speak on it. And I do love the quote from Castellanos there. I think this is who Bryce Harper is as a leader, as a personality, as a human being. And he is not afraid of anyone. That it does not matter if it is Edmundo Sosa or Rob Manfred that he's getting in his face. And I do say that as we had a pretty cool story, I thought, from Edmundo Sosa shortly before hitting the previous home run. And obviously before he had the little, collision with Brandon Marsh that did look to shake him up a little bit, although he does seem to be fine. That Edmundo got pretty frustrated during the course of the game, slammed his helmet down, and Bryce Harper was the guy to come immediately over him, say, that's not what we do. That's not who you are. Kind of lock your head back on straight. And then Edmundo obviously going yard shortly after here. I love that Harper is this expressive, this vocal leader, and he is a very influential player across all of Major League Baseball. I honestly don't think Harper is given enough credit directly when you talk about a player who was hyped up as the next big thing, the next greatest prospect, and he has been everything about that and then some. Now, to continue on with some of this meeting, this was my favorite quote of this, once again, Nick Castellanos, the wordsmith that he is. I thought this was the most relevant part as far as the overarching theme. And how it goes on is to say this portion here, that quote, Rob seems to be in a pretty desperate place on how important it is to get this salary cap because he's floating the word lockout 2 years in advance of our collective bargaining agreement's expiration, Cassiano said. That's nothing to throw around. That's the same thing as me saying in a marriage, I think divorce is a possibility. It's probably going to happen. You just don't say those things. Though Manfred has not committed to pursuing a salary cap, multiple owners have criticized MLB's current economic system and alluded to a cap as a panacea directly or indirectly. And this kind of continues on here, but I did want to kind of harp on that Castellanos quote, is I agree with his overall point here. It is crazy to me that the commissioner of Major League Baseball is talking about a potential lockout a year and a half in advance of this ever actually coming to the table here. That is something that both sides, the players and the league directly, should be actively looking to avoid. And for baseball specifically, this is a sport that's had its ups and downs as far as viewership. I do feel that there is some momentum on baseball sides, that people, the general public, the non-baseball fanatics, people people that just, sports fandoms, the more general public here, have been more locked into baseball than it's felt like in several years. I think the league, to its credit, have taken some proactive steps, such as implementing the pitch clock and doing a little bit of a better job marketing up their biggest stars. And I do think that this has worked. You basically take away all of that progress that you make if the sport in its entirety is put on pause or does not play a season as scheduled there. That is something that should be worst case scenario, and it is strange to me the Manfred is like just floating that out there. That should never, in my mind, be coming from the commissioner's office, and that should be the number one thing that both sides are looking to avoid here. Now, a bit more that I did want to dig in on is this portion of the article here, which writes, MLB's desire for a salary cap dates back decades. The players' strike in 1994 that canceled the World Series was in direct response to the league's effort to move to a cap system. Some of the same talking points used by MLB in the 1990s, particularly about the lack of profitability of teams amid an environment that has seen immense growth in franchise value and revenue, have reemerged in recent years. Quote, in the back of our heads, we're like, why are you talking to us like owning a baseball team is like owning a nail salon, Castellanos said, that you're only going to be a functional business if you can make up the money that you put in this year. And again, just another terrific quote, man. Shout out to Castellanos. And it continues on to write, players on multiple teams told ESPN they have used meetings with Manfred to press him on the lack of payroll spending by certain teams. Going into this season, the gap between luxury tax payrolls of the highest spending teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers at more than $400 million, and the lowest spenders, the Miami Marlins at just under $86 million, raised ire among fans and made salary caps a far bigger part of the rhetoric surrounding the game than in previous years. Now, the salary cap conversation is pretty complex here. I'm not going to dive into my full feelings on the situation, as it has one that I do think I see the point on both sides of things here. Obviously, we want a fair game, and there is quite a drastic difference in what the top teams are spending versus what the bottom. And I do think it is problematic from a league-wide perspective when you don't have a bit of equality as far as the chances of winning here. Now, the counter to that is I also don't think owners should be punished if they want to invest more in their teams. That, like Steve Cohen of the Mets, a guy that very clearly wants to spend all the money he can to improve his baseball team. I kind of don't think that should be punished either. So I have a hard time finding the balance. And to be perfectly honest, my genuine feeling here is what should be more important than the salary cap is the salary floor. That we should not have these teams, these billionaire owners, not spending to give their team a competitive chance. A team like the Pittsburgh Pirates right now that is in the $80 million pay range, right near the bottom of Major League Baseball, just above the Marlins, and is working to move money at the deadline, to shed money off their salary cap. That's stuff that does, to an extent, ruin the integrity of the game, I feel. And ultimately, we just want good baseball. That you want competition. You want all these teams, and it's more complex than just that. Again, I don't want to dive fully into the salary cap. And by the way, this is still, once again, a full year and a half away before this becomes problematic. But the fact that the tensions are this high, that we're hearing it this wide open and this like pressing as news currently, I don't think is a great sign for how things are going to work out. Now, the final portion that I did want to pull up was how Castellanos wrapped it up here. And this is what I wholeheartedly agree with him. The article writes, public discussion has done little to alter his opinion of players on a cap. The benefit of meeting with Manfred, Castellanos said, is to better understand the league's perspective on a business that made more than $12 billion in revenue last year. With the league aiming to nationalize local television rights by 2028 and the growth of gambling and other ancillary businesses, Castellanos believes education is vital to ensuring a well-informed player population. Quote, we don't really know that much about it, Castellanos said. It's not like somebody is teaching us about the conglomerate of Major League Baseball that we, the players, make possible. There's no players, there's no Major League Baseball. I don't believe Rob Manfred is evil. I don't believe the owners are evil. I don't believe any of that. Nobody wants a work stoppage in baseball, not the players, not the league. And this should be the premise of all conversations from here. That yes, it's fine that tensions can explode once in a while, but it should be recognized that you guys have to be on the same side trying to work something out. Now, granted, obviously there's going to be issues that are sticking points, and the salary cap is right at the top of the list. Certainly one that seems to be leading the charge in all of this, but I do think that there should be a bit of acknowledgement for the greater good is both sides should be working to can we put the best Major League Baseball product on the floor or on the field here. And I do wonder if that's getting a bit diluted in some of the feelings that are going on. There's still a lot to go down to. And for what it's worth, Bryce Harper directly was asked about this, and he did not dispute the reports of his confrontation with Rob Manfred, but declined to get into further details. And the quote that he did give out is, quote, "I've always been very vocal in labor discussions, just not in a way that people can see." And I do love this out of Bryce Harper here. That is something that he should be passionate about. He is in a spot where he has a bit of power, a bit of respect, and is obviously using his platform for what he believes is the greater good here. I respect him having the stones to step to Rob Manfred like this. I don't love the way this overall just theme seems to be trending, that I think we are kind of destined to some form of lockout or strike again. I hope that is not the case, and I think both sides should be very clearly working to actively avoid that. We still got a long way to go until then, but boy, only in Philadelphia and only Bryce Harper, man. So we will see if there's any more fallout from this. I did not think this was noteworthy enough when we started to hear the whispers of this meeting, but the fact that we did get all these details, I thought it was worth jumping on here and recording, dropping a video on this, and kind of giving a little bit of my thoughts. There's still a lot more questions than answers that I have on the overall. Like, one salary cap is not created equal. I think there's ways that the MLB could effectively introduce this, that it does benefit the sport as a whole. I also think there's ways that it would kind of take baseball a step back. Like, you look around the salary cap for other leagues, very different there. The NBA, for example, it's incredibly complex to dive into what that salary cap is. They've worked with a quote unquote soft cap for years. I would push back and say the new CBA is no longer that. The second apron is essentially a hard cap, but nonetheless, without going too deep into that, there's a lot of intricacies to this overall conversation here. But do want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you have any issue with Bryce Harper doing this? Is this something that should be praised? Are you excited? What is your feelings when reading that? Because this is one of the more bizarre situations that I've ever seen in professional sports. And at the end of the day, I do give Bryce Harper some respect for being able to just have the guts to do that there. And I do think that he's one of the rare players that fits that criteria and has earned that right. But let me know what you guys think below. We'll be bringing it back to the Phillies on the field moving forward, but did want to jump on and update you guys. Very crazy situation, and one that I had never seen before, so do want to hear from you guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in once again. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Digest.